The title of this video is 10 Questions of Science That Atheists Cannot Answer. In over 43 years of interviewing atheists regarding their knowledge of science to support the idea that God does not exist, I have consistently found that they are lacking in accurate knowledge of these true facts. The basic nature of the universe, Earth, and human life cannot be explained by any naturalistic process. Once a person understands the complexities necessary to begin and order our universe, it becomes clear that only an infinitely intelligent being would be capable of engineering and orchestrating this magnificent universe and human life on Earth. Number one, since time, space, and matter did not exist before the universe began, where did these things come from to make the universe? Number two, since there were no physical laws before the universe, what force controlled the universe to exact a specific outcome to allow for life? Gravity, electromagnetism, entropy, and the distribution of matter all require precise control at the beginning of the universe, or they would have collapsed back upon itself. If not God, and seeing that the laws of physics did not exist, what force acted upon these imperative forces to cause them to be set precisely where they needed to be to sustain life 13.7 billion years later? 3. The universe began with an extreme low state of entropy. Mathematical physicist Sir Roger Penrose said that the only possibility that this could have taken place is if an intelligence acted upon the expansion to cause a low state of entropy. Given the conditions that were present at the commencement of the universe, scientists would have expected a very high state of entropy. How is this possible if the universe evolved on its own? Number 4. The ratio between gravity and electromagnetism during the first picosecond of the universe was also precisely set. If this balance was increased by only 1 part in 10 to the 40th, there would never have been life on Earth billions of years later. Cosmologist Paul Davies determined by calculation that a 1 in 10 to the 40th chance is equal to shooting and hitting a coin from Earth at the far side of the universe. Now, no natural or evolutionary force could cause this to take place. So what caused this extreme low state of entropy, if not an infinite intelligence? 5. The mass difference between a proton and an electron is 1 to 1,836. This means that the proton is precisely 1,836 times larger than an electron. Now, despite this difference in size, both have the exact same electric charge. If we are to alter this electric charge by just 1 part in 100 billion, every atom in the universe would self-destruct. Since this mass to electric charge could not evolve, it must have been precisely set first before life could begin. How could an evolutionary process achieve this precise ratio the first time? 6. Our universe contained the precise physical constants that have the exact values that are required to allow for complex structures such as galaxies, stars, planets, and people to exist. There are over 122 of these anthropic constants. How did evolution dial these constants in to the precise setting necessary for life and sustain them for 9 billion years until Earth was formed? Evolution cannot produce precise settings all at once. Yet all 122 of these constants had to be in place at the same time before life could begin. Explain how this happened, if not by an infinite intelligence. 7. Despite several failed attempts, no scientist has ever been able to prove that life comes from anything except other life. Animals, plants, all organisms, all life comes from their own kind. In the only case of a claimed spontaneous generation of life, Louis Pasteur proved that this experiment was a hoax. By scientific evidence, Pasteur proved that life only comes from life which existed previously. There has never been any provable exceptions to this basic law of life. Not long after Darwin published his Origin of Species in 1859, Louis Pasteur challenged the idea of spontaneous generation. This hypothesis is the very foundation of evolution as the origin of life. Dr. Pasteur's simple but elegant swan-necked flask experiments impeach the idea of organic life as originating from non-life as an assertion. Since it's not possible for evolution to produce the first life, what process caused life to begin if not God? 8. The only evolutionary process that has been proven by scientists is that certain species, when placed in harsh environments, have the ability to adapt themselves by certain changes that permit their continued survival. This type of limited evolutionary process is assumed as evidence that greater evolutionary processes are also possible. What is falsely insinuated is that man could have evolved from the ape species. To the present day, this is 2018, no scientific proof has ever been presented which would validate that man could have evolved from the ape species. No intermediate species have been discovered in the fossil record, though several fraudulent examples have been presented. The idea that all life forms originated from a common ancestor has no scientific evidence to prove that this has actually taken place, other than the limited evolution of certain species for the purpose of adaptation. The creatures, the planets, and organisms that exist on Earth, they all follow a predetermined course for their existence that is fixed and unchangeable. Every animal appeared on Earth fully formed as they now exist, and only under certain rare circumstances has any animal or plant changed slightly for the purpose of adaptation. There's no evidence that any species has evolved itself into a completely new species outside the original species. Since evolution of species has been scientifically disproven, how did life originate, if not from God? Number 9. When we think of evolution of the species in the sense of apes becoming man, this type of evolution has never presented evidence to us that would lead us to scientifically validate this kind of massive changes in evolution. Biology is based on taxonomy, or classification of species. This is the reason we see plants and animals with different scientific names. A species that occurs within an existing species because of adaptability is quite common. This new species within a species is not the same as evolution in the sense of creating a different animal or distinct kind of organisms. When different species attempt to produce fertile offspring by breeding, the resulting offspring are always sterile. When donkeys and horses breed, the result is a mule which cannot reproduce itself. This is due to the massive differences between donkeys and horses in their DNA as distinct species. The difficulty in accomplishing the same outcome between apes and humans is not only difficult, it's impossible. Although attempts have been made several times to impregnate a female ape with a human sperm in order to produce a hybrid ape-man, this procedure has limits that are impossible to overcome. This is due to the impossible conflict that exists between the incompatibility of human and ape chromosomes and the genetic instructions necessary to create a hybrid. Chimpanzees and human beings start by sharing 95% of their DNA sequence and about 99% of their coding DNA sequences. Because of this close proximity in these two, many have assumed that the boundaries are not impossible to cross. One of the biggest obstacles in creating an ape-human hybrid is that humans have 46 chromosomes and apes have 48. In the event that a zygote should form, this difference in chromosomes will not permit the chromosomes to pair together correctly in order to cause pregnancy. Finally, there is at least 40 million base pair differences between the genetic code of apes and humans that further make the chance of creating a living missing link impossible. Chromosomes alone are not the key in this regard. The genetic code that is necessary to instruct cells on how to form living tissue, organs, and body parts is the key to make it possible for an ape and a human to produce offspring. The genetic code for an ape is lacking 40 million characters. Making human and ape genetic code compatible is a bit like trying to use the operating system of an iPhone to run a nuclear submarine. The genetic code of an ape is lacking the key instructions necessary to make a viable being between ape and human. The combining of ape and human genetic code into a viable species has never happened before, and it never will happen. Understanding these things, how could an advanced life form such as man exist at all if not by the creation of an infinite being? Number 10, the Bible presents us with scientific facts of the universe precisely as they have existed since the beginning of the cosmos. These facts of science were not placed into the Bible in order to prove that the text was scientific, but simply as comments about God and what He's created. By the inclusion of these statements, we see that the author of these texts, he must have known attributes of the universe before these facts were known to science. In the beginning, there was nothing, and then suddenly the universe came into existence. This is what Genesis 1:1 states. That's exactly what science has proven so far. Time, space, and matter came into existence at the same precise moment. Also, Genesis 1:1. The universe is expanding since its inception, and it's being stretched out, and this is the precise words of Jeremiah 10:12 in describing how God ordered the universe. It's also described in 17 other places in the Bible. The number of stars in the universe are so great in number they cannot be counted, Jeremiah 33:22 states. The sun follows a circular course through the universe, according to Psalms 19:4-6. The earth is a sphere, according to Isaiah 40:22. The earth hangs in empty space, suspended by gravity, according to Job 26:7. All matter in the universe is made up of invisible material consisting of atoms, according to Hebrews 11:3. The invisible physiology and function of the human body, understood by God before medicine understood these facts, is revealed in Genesis 17:12. The universe will end by a massive heat death, as spoken by 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. Now, no other religion or God of this world has ever conveyed through the writings of their scriptures such detailed knowledge of the universe prior to the scientific discovery of these facts. How is it that God, in the Bible, knew all of this scientific information about the universe and the physical nature of man hundreds, even thousands of years before science discovered these things? No atheist can answer these 10 questions, apart from a universe that was created by an intelligent being. These are the questions of science and not faith. Yet the premise that science eliminates the need for God cannot explain how the universe began and why it exists as perfectly engineered for life. These attributes of the universe which have made life possible on earth cannot be explained by any naturalistic process. Now, there's only two possibilities for the origin of the universe. Either it came into being on its own, or it was caused. Because science cannot define how our universe came into existence from nothing, by any scientific process that can be proven apart from mathematical calculations, this leaves us with the only remaining solution for our universe. It was caused to begin by a source of incredible intelligence. This intelligent source is the only scientific answer for the origin of the universe. When we carefully examine what scientists say about the universe and how it began, we find that they do not provide us with a scientific answer, but one that's really based upon mysticism. Theoretical physicist, the late Stephen Hawking, was perhaps the greatest mind that has ever existed. Yet his theories for the origin of the universe were all based upon non-provable scientific hypotheses. Although scientifically and mathematically sound, these theories are impossible to prove because we do not have the capacity to see beyond our universe. All of the scientific evidence we do have concludes that there was nothing before the universe began. The science of the universe, it demands that with an indeterminate period of eternity past, when nothing existed, with a sudden reality when time, space, and matter came into existence, this requires a source that's transcendent of time, space, and matter, that possesses extreme intellectual capacity to engineer such a beginning. Nothing has ever been proven by science to come into existence from nothing, despite mathematical calculations that show that this is possible. With all of the efforts exercised to prove a universe by a natural process, and these efforts being unable to do so, it's much easier to accept that all that exists began because of a being who caused it to be so. Now, if we can believe that there are advanced life forms on other planets in the universe which have intellectual capacities that are billions of years more advanced than our own, it's not really that difficult to imagine that there's a being who has existed for an eternal duration, who has the capacity to create a universe and make it able to support life. This is particularly true when we simply look at the evidence we do have for the universe, which proves that the manner in which the universe began and unfolded in subsequent years was precisely controlled to exact a specific outcome that would permit life on Earth today. I sincerely hope that this brief study has opened your mind to the possibility that the universe we occupy does not exist by itself. In fact, it exists for a purpose, and that purpose was to provide you and I with an environment where we could live our lives. If God made this world for us, then it's certain that He also wants for us to know Him. Since it was by words that we communicate with each other, it's certain that this being would seek to communicate us also by words. I submit to you that after nearly 44 years of my own study, I believe the words of this being has been left to us whereby we might know Him. And I believe that this is the text of the Bible. Now, if any person takes the time to really study what's being said, they will always come away with the opinion that these texts are extraordinary and reveal precisely who this infinite being is. Incredibly, though He obviously has no need of us, He loves us, every one of us. It is the pursuit of this being, who we call God, who came to earth in the person of Jesus, the Messiah, that we can know who He is and why we exist ourselves.